Toronto new home buyers, meaning pre-construction home buyers, are walking away from deposits as much as $300,000. Yeesh, this is rough. There's probably more to come. And what does this all mean for the Toronto real estate market? Well, I'm going to be breaking all of this down for you on this week's reaction video. And if you're looking for some help on how to navigate the real estate market, whether it be the last little bit of the fall market or just getting ready for the 2024 the real estate market, you can book a call with me using the link that's on the screen right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Simply click on the date and a time that works best for you. And then when you see the prompt, fill in your name, email, mobile phone number, and the question you have for me, and then we'll chat then. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Properties TV. My name is Zhen, and I run and operate a RE/MAX in the greater Toronto area, on top of making awesome educational real estate content just like this one for you. And if you're enjoying this content I'm putting out there right now, make sure to do me a solid and smash the like button and subscribe to the Prime Property channel. Now, the first and only article we'll be going real deep into is Toronto area buyers are walking away from deposits on new homes, so pre-construction homes, some losing as much as $300,000. Whew, that's a lot of money. And I'm just going to put out on a whim right there. They could be losing more than that, because walking away doesn't mean you're not obligated to the contract anymore, right? So some of the components I'm highlighted here is, so right now they're saying that because of how weak the real estate market is, some buyers are basically not closing on their pre-construction contracts, right? Because you have effectively put in a deposit, and some are losing as much as $320,000. Now, where this $320,000 is coming from is, I think the writer or the research for Toronto Star is saying that, hey, look, we've gone through some Facebook pages and we have seen some people willing to lose up to $300,000 of their deposit to get a deal done. So how they do it is, look, they bought it for X, maybe the deposit was 20%, and then now they're subtracting the price by the deposit, so that basically they lose their deposit, but someone else is obligated to the contract, right? So that's essentially what's happening. So Toronto Star says it's a new phenomenon, which it's not. I'm going to show you a bit later. And particularly in the low-rise homes in the GTA suburbs, because prices ran up really quickly and now they're falling really quickly. I've been saying this isn't really a new thing because we've seen this in 2017, right? So essentially what happened is, as we had the run up of the prices in the 905 region, right? A lot of builders released homes that were, pre-construction marked up 20 to 30%, and then the market tanked 20 to 30% because the foreign buyer tax came in between April and July. And then 12 to 18 months later, people who bought during that period basically had the prices come down 10, 20%. And then they also paid a 10, 20% premium on top of that. So the spread was 40%. So this is not a new thing, and I've been saying for a very long time. And that's why I've always been saying, hey, watch out for pre-construction low rise. But here we go, right? We got some anecdotal and real evidence that things aren't looking great, right? So the other part I have highlighted here is that buyers who bought a pre-construction low-rise home, so these are essentially homes that can be built 10 to 18 months really, really quickly, and they close individually. They don't close in like a bulk or like the entire building like a condo. So that's why pre-construction, when you buy low-rise, if you buy at such a high premium, that duration to build is so short that if you get caught off on the other side, it's a big problem. Not to mention, last week we talked about how, like, if you buy a low rise, the money is in a trust, right? So it's like a double whammy, right? So they're basically saying that anyone who bought a low rise home at the tail end of 2021 or the beginning of 2022, when prices are astronomically high, agreed, with extremely low interest rates, are having to close in drastically different interest rate environment. So essentially, let's say prices came down 10%, you paid a 10% premium on your 2021 or 2022 pre-construction low rise, right? So your spread is already 20%, and that's assuming you can actually get an appraisal for that, meaning that the bank values it that much and gets you a mortgage. And then to kind of add the kicker to making things worse, maybe you were actually legitimately qualified for that purchase in 2022 when interest rates were at 2% and you were stressed at 5.25%. Now the interest rates right now, 18 months to 2 years, when the building is, like, the house is finished, is now at 7% almost, right? And your stress test at 9% or 9.5%, depending on where you go to, right? Meaning that you went from a 5.25% qualifying stress test rate to a 9% qualifying stress test rate. That's even going to affect a lot of people. So if you were just on the brink of that, you're barely going to afford it at the 9% stress test. So that's a double whammy if this was all legitimately could be qualified for, right? So it's a big problem, and I can see why people are walking away from deposits because they have no way out, unfortunately. So for people who bought a condo in 2021 or 2022, they're likely closing in 2025 or 2026, which is why not many people are walking away from deposits on condo units right now. Because one, you're not going to be walking away from anything because you don't have to close. So the timeline for the market to correct itself or go back to the normal and hope that maybe closing the contract, still financially makes sense, you still have a runtime for the market to correct, right? So there's no action to take it upon. Whereas again, with the very fast build low-rise homes, we're going to see some troubles coming Now, if you're on my newsletter, you'll see that I have two buildings that are side by side, and basically one sold for about $1,000 a foot, like 6 years ago. The other one sold for about $1,600 a foot in the entertainment district, like about 4 years ago now, right? Right at the start of the pandemic. Both of them are coming up for occupancy and closing real soon. And I think that's going to be kind of like a good indicator of like where things are going to pan out with the walking away from deposits for condos, right? Because they were bought at $1,600. Let's see if they appraise. And if you're wondering where all this stuff's coming from, you can sign up for the newsletter down here. I do kind of give a little bit more like personal notes and like little tidbits and anecdotal things in the newsletter. Now, if the buyer doesn't close on the property upon completion and pay the remainder of the purchase price, a builder can seize the deposit, which is correct, and sue for any damages. Again, this is not anything legal. It just needs seeing this a lot, right? Damages is basically represented in the sense that if, let's say, you bought the property for $2 million, right? You walk away from your deposit of $400,000, whatever, right? And the builder can't resell that because the market's not at $2 million anymore. And they try to the best of their ability and they ultimately end up selling at 1.8. So that difference of 1.8 and 2 million, the 200,000 is damages, meaning that because you as the pre-construction buyer were obligated to the $2 million purchase price, the seller, being the builder, only sold it for 1.8. There's a difference between the two, right? So sometimes they may seize the deposit plus that or not. It just depends on the case, right? And like almost all the cases that I see, the builder wins. The person who is selling the property and has to sell for less, the buyer ends up paying it. So you can see here in this headline, dated 2018, Ontario couple ordered to pay $470,000 after reneging on an Ontario deal. Essentially, in short, is there's a lot of case studies where if you go in firm, which is like a pre-construction contract, and you don't close and the seller or the builder sells it for less than what you bought it for, they have damages on the difference of whatever ultimately sell it for. Now, this is in 2018 because it took some time for this to kind of all settle in, meaning that like call it 1 year, the peak of the market in 2017 was April, and then things took a tumble afterwards, right? And then the court order was in March of 2018. So this was reported then. So again, this is not new. I warned this for many times, and low-rise had that issue impending because when it was very frothy, people were paying a really, really high amount for kind of like what the pre-construction was because they think that it was going to appreciate at that pace. But like if you pay 20% premium and you basically have a 2-year build time, which is essentially a lot of low-rise, that means you need the market to do 10% a year just to make that work and appraise properly. But when the market turned the other way, it went the other way. And that spread is really big, right? And that's kind of the challenge. Now, someone here is saying that the buyers of this is they rather face the builder's wrath and walk away than to close on the transaction, which makes sense, right? Like basically there's nothing for them to do, the buyers, right? Until they kind of get some kind of verdict of what happens to the unit that they bought and if the builder sold it. Because if they were to close on it, assuming they can, right, they're probably going to have to sell it for a loss anyway. So they're probably maybe taking that calculated risk. Or the other option is like they can't even close even if you have a private, because the private won't lend on this if you're so underwater, that this is really their only option. And I would say in the past 2 weeks, I've taken some calls on this, and it's a very dire situation I'm hearing. And I don't think anyone went into it on purpose. And it's just a very unfortunate thing that, the interest rates went up and you had people saying, Tiff Macklem is saying that the interest rates stay low. So they levered up and they took out money from their existing home and then they bought something. And then now both of them came down and there's no way out. So it's a very unfortunate situation. And this is the problem with central bank forward guidance. Anyways, this is an evolving story, he said, and it'll be very common in the next few years, especially as condos come to the market from people who bought at the height of the pandemic. And we're not going to see this until 2025 or 2026. So if interest rates come down and maybe the prices appreciate, maybe they're okay, right? But at the current moment right now, a lot of the condos that are closing, at the latest, I would say they were bought in probably like late 2018 or maybe like early 2020, like for the mid-rise ones. And we haven't seen any issues, or I haven't heard of any issues yet. But like I said earlier, that big one in the entertainment district is probably going to be a good sign of how the condo market is going to fare on this, and if it's going to be something similar to the low-rise pre-construction market that this article is talking about right now, where people are walking away from the deposits. I'm sure a lot of this will kind of sort itself out because it's made to be like a really big deal. And we saw a lot of this in York region in 2017, 2018, right? Especially when they implemented the stress test. So it's very similar in that sense where like market went up, market went down, some new restricting credit availability came in, so it made closing that much difficult. But eventually it sorted itself out, right? And obviously the pandemic prices ramping up kind of saved a lot of the people in that sense. But I don't think it's going to like blow up the real estate market for these kind of low-rise freehold homes, but the condo may have a sense because there's so much inventory that could get flooded, right? So, that's the TBD. Anyways, hope this gives you an idea what's happening in the real estate market. If you're looking for some help on how to navigate this market, whether in the last little bit of the fall market in 2023, or you want to kind of gear up for 2024, you can book a call with me using the link that's right here. It's www.chatwithzen.com. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya! Now that I'm done watching this video, I think you should check out this video. And you know what? Why don't you check out this video too?